everyone, and welcome to WIU Inside the System. My name is Dr. Jamie Johnson. I'm the Interim Director for the School of Law Enforcement and Justice Administration. Today, we have an exciting podcast for you today. We have Professor Rob Kelly actually coming for us, and we're actually going to be on Zoom today because he's going to be in a distant location. But Professor Kelly has been with us for quite a while now. He brings a wealth of experience. He's been on the Pennsylvania State Police for 25 years, and he has a ton of practical experience he brings into the classroom. And I can attest, okay, from all of his student evaluations and from what students tell me, they love Professor Kelly. So this is your time and your episode to get to know Professor Kelly in great detail. So, Professor Kelly, welcome to WIU Inside the System. It's an honor to have you here, sir.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Jamie. Good to see you.
All righty. Okay, so first, let's talk up. If you enjoyed your summer.
Yeah, it was an excellent summer, but I'm ready to come back. So when we're recording this, we're not too far away from the beginning of the fall semester. So
right.
I am excited, had a nice break, got some things done, but now it's ready to return time and looking forward to it.
Well, welcome. We're excited to have you back. Okay, so, all right, Rob. Okay, so I'm going to go through a few of the questions that I have outlined for us just to get to know you a little bit more. And that way for the students coming in to say, who is Professor Kelly? And of course, I may go advance on some of the questions you have because you have an exciting background. I like to emphasize that a little bit. Okay, so first off, can you just tell us, Rob, how did you get in to Pennsylvania State Police? How did that start off? Give us your timeline and give us that experience.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a funny story. So I always kind of either wanted to go to law school or be a police officer. I ended up doing both, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But I was in my last year of undergraduate school, and it's funny, a couple of friends went up into Pennsylvania. I did my undergrad at West Virginia. And the guys all picked up Pennsylvania State Police applications, and I was the only one that wasn't there in person. So I was like, yeah, grab me one too, I guess, like when they were leaving. And I filled it out, put it in. I'm the only one that ended up, getting hired and working for the Pennsylvania State Police out of that whole group. And I was the one that wasn't there, ironically enough. But basically, just weighing. Now, mind you, at this point in time, I'm 21, about to go into the hiring process, and you don't have all the knowledge that you do later in life, which I try to impart to the students. Get them a little bit of wisdom when they ask questions. I try to answer their questions from the framework of what do I wish I know when I was like closer to their age. But at that point in time, I just thought, it would be cool, hey, be a police officer. Maybe I'll go serve. The state police is great. It's an elite law enforcement organization. It's the first state police of its type uniformed in the country, founded in 1905.
Wow.
So it looked like a fun way, to get some interesting experiences and adventure maybe. And then maybe I'd reconsider. At the time, I thought, I'll do this almost like a military enlistment maybe for 4 or 5 years. And, then maybe go to law school. Well, it turns out what actually happened was I did it for 25 years and fully retired from it. But I did go to law school. That wasn't after 5 years, though. It was more like after 7, So after 7 years, I went to the evening division of law school because I figured, hey, if I don't do it at this point, then I'm probably not going to do it. So I went ahead and did it then. So knocked both out, both of the things that I said that I wanted to do, I guess.
Well, that is challenging. Going to law school at night plus working, you had to be exhausted.
Yeah, it was a crazy time. Of course, I was much younger, than I am now, but I was able to do it, and you got a lot from it, obviously. It was great, though, in that, I went and got experience. So now when I was in the classroom, when we'd study things like criminal law or criminal procedure,
Yeah.
or some of the advanced electives, I was kind of a ringer. So, people wanted to be in my study group for those topics. But to me, it gave me a lot of depth then, where I understood when I'd be reading cases. I had been a police officer, so I'd been in those type of scenarios before. So I went to law school. It was really enriching at the time, as a veteran in my career when I went. I think it enabled me to get the most out of it.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the experience, because that's one of the major comments I hear out of the students who take your classes, is that you always bring in that experience. And that is basically the MO of our program, because every faculty member we have, okay, is hired, has to have that experience. And you are top of the tier of that, okay? And I just letting you know that the students love that. So that's an excellent, I'm glad you made that comment, because that's huge to have that experience brought in the classroom. And I bet it did make you pretty savvy, okay, especially against all the people going into law school. Now you had that field experience and you knew that side of the law. That is excellent. That's excellent. Okay, Rob, I got a question for you. Can you tell us, because here's the thing, the students come in. I have had a lot of freshmen, transfers, okay, and they're coming in and they're saying, okay, look, I want to be a state patrol officer, right? What's it like? What's it going to be like? What's the training correct, okay? Can you tell us any interesting stories about your training to join the Pennsylvania State Police and through that entire process?
Yeah, and again, I'll approach this from the perspective of what do I wish I knew when,
Yes.
I was going into a little bit of part of that, but also kind of what motivated me at the time. So the training first, the first point I'll make about it is it's very rigorous. To me, the Pennsylvania State Police Academy has a reputation for being particularly rigorous. And that was not a con for me at the time. That was a selling point for me at the time, because I wanted a challenge, and it was a challenge. So you're talking about 26 weeks. So that's basically half a year, and it's a live-in academy. So the good part of that is that free room and board, right?
That's good.
The bad part of that is that while you're up there, in training, after you're there, there's a little like indoctrination period they do for like 3 or 4 weeks. Then after you're there for a while, they will let you go out on the weekends, but not if you're not meeting spec and performance and all of those kind of things. So my advice though would be, it sounds kind of obvious, but you prepare for both the physical and the intellectual rigors of what you're going to be doing, because you're going to get hit with the two of those things at once. And so you don't want to be like, oh, I'll just use this to get in shape. You want to be in a good level of shape before you go in, because you'll have that several times a day be a factor in your PT, your physical training. You have morning activities that you do that relate to that, but then you have the gym training that you have to do for arrest and control techniques, calisthenics conditioning, all of those kind of, for a different type of strength building. In the morning, generally you do your cardiovascular with like runs and all of those type of things. But then it's like in between that, it's traditional classroom activities. And then if you go to a live-in academy, then you also have other activities too that go on, where the state police organizations tend to be a little bit more militaristic in a way, not in a bad way, but they are paramilitary structured. So you could be subject, for example, to random room inspections and all of those we had to take care of the horses. So I learned how to take care of groom.
Cool.
Everything that you ride, everything that you need to do, with regard to the horses and everything like that too. You might have to take care of the dogs sometimes in the kennel. So there's some kind of neat stuff that goes. I mean, you do get to do a lot of really neat things at the academy, and it's so such a variety. There's almost too much to list. But my main bit of advice for everybody would be, we can help you, for example, at LEJA, our school. That'll condition you and get you ready for the intellectual rigors. We also have clubs and all of those kind of things that can help you, regardless of your interests, with physical things. Like, for example, I'm the director and advisor for the boxing club, and there's always some professor putting something on to help people with the Illinois power test or something like that. But so Western has a lot of activities, extracurriculars that you can do for the physical part of it too. And for the intellectual part of it, class obviously helps. And then the students, if you take advantage of your instructors as either advisors of a club you're in or during office hours or whatever, we are always talking to students about advice on how to, if it's preparing physically, preparing emotionally, getting ready for an oral board exam for a job you want. We all have a lot of experience. So that's the kind of experience that we bring to bear. But so the intellectual, we got you sort of covered. And then the physical is there, but the student, has to drive that. We're not going to be like, you have to work out today,
We should install that, shouldn't we? That's just really humor. I have a question for you, because I get asked this one a lot, right? Okay, can you describe, if you said, okay, look, I want to get in shape, I want to get ready to go, my goodness, is there fads out there, right? Okay, would you describe what you would tell a student right now to say, hey, I want to be in shape to go to Pennsylvania State Police? What kind of program would you even talk about or putting them on? Are you putting them on a militaristic one, push-up, pull-up, sit-ups? Are you talking about just like bodybuilding? I hear that one a lot too. Push, pull legs. Okay, what are you thinking, Rob?
So I'm thinking balance on the program that I would put together. The one is that a lot of people cringe to hear a little bit is that cardio.
Yep.
So you want to get your cardio up. And unfortunately, if you don't like to run, okay, now I work out to this day, but running has never been my favorite. So if you don't like to run, that's okay, but you have to do that. So incorporate not only some distance running up to maybe about 3 to 5 miles, like cross country, build up a base, and then also maybe work some sprint work like in there from time to time. And then on the other preparation side, I would make sure that I did body weight type of calisthenics that are targeted to what they're going to want to see if it's on your physical requirements test for a particular agency. So get yourself all prepped. And I wouldn't prep right to the minimum standard.
Yeah.
I would prep beyond the standard. That way it's easy, right? So by the time you get to training, the standards you will surpass them. By the way, they would give you the same advice if you were trying to get into, say, one of the really difficult special ops in the military. Don't just come meeting the minimum standards.
Yep.
You want to come exceeding those standards. And yes, there is a place for strength training, weightlifting too. So that's what I do now. I do currently. I alternate between a 3-day-a-week full body routine, and I also then alternate to a 4-day, which is basically upper, lower on Monday, Tuesdays, Wednesdays off, Thursdays, Fridays. And then I do cardio about 3 days a week. And although it is light cardio, I don't count walks. But at my age, I do a lot of walks too. Walks are great, by the way. But so just do a blend and make sure you give yourself, say, like a day of the week for just full active recovery, usually a Sunday, but whatever works for a student's busy schedule. So I would blend in a mix of calisthenics, cardio, but the cardio, unfortunately, everybody means like running, and maybe some sprints too. And then also a weight related program, a push-pull legs is great. A full body 3 days a week would be great. They're great too, because they would allow you to build the other stuff into the program, right? And where you wouldn't have to worry about overtraining. But now what I do a upper lower at this moment that you see me right now. And I work in cardio, and because I've already been through my career, right? And if, I'm not going to be running that fast anymore unless someone's chasing me. But yeah, I just do the machines and all of that kind of stuff, and then my wife and I walk.
That's excellent. Well, I appreciate that, just because there's so much on the internet, and sometimes it's like, hey, this is a professional who's actually done it, and that helps a ton. So thank you, Rob, very much. For the next question I got for you.
You can't go wrong with push-ups, pull-ups.
No.
For academy prep and the running and stuff like that. And then now a lot, weights come into play, because a lot of the standards are they're going to want to see you push up X percentage, of your body weight for strength testing coming into a program. So that's not going to hurt you at all.
Now, if they take their physical capabilities seriously, as well as their mental, they're good to go. Okay, and that's what we hopefully will get across. Okay, Rob, I have a question for you. Okay, and the reason I bring this up is because a lot of students come in, either they'll tell me, hey, I don't want to make a mistake, or I'm concerned about making a mistake, okay, whatever that might be, or they're going to mess up on an exam and they're going to get a failure, correct? Okay, at some point. Would you please describe, okay, so that way students, a parent, okay, or anybody watching this, what was your biggest failure, okay, throughout your career, and what did you learn from that?
Yeah, so not to be cagey and like dodge the question or anything, but
That's okay.
There's going to be like, let me put it to you this way, okay?
Yeah.
In law enforcement culture, there's going to be, just expect to fail a lot, like particularly at the beginning of your career. Now, going through any intensive training environment, when you're in initial training, they are going to put you under somewhat of a microscope. Part of that is to generate artificial stress, like so you get used to performance and adapting. Part of it too is so that you notice things. For example, if you go to, say, like a state police academy, they may make you stand two, like, which means you get up against the wall, like when somebody's coming by, like, and you give them space. And if it's an officer, like a commissioned officer, which means lieutenant or above, you might have to give them a salute or something. But a little bit of inside baseball, what they're doing though is like they're conditioning you to be aware of your surroundings, right? So it seems like they're being mean or military or whatever, but they're conditioning you to be observant, right? So if an officer comes around the corner, you stand two, you may have to give them a salute or something like that. But what they're really doing is making you aware, because like now, like let's say you failed to do that. At that point in time, that's a minor failure, by the way, but you'll have some nuisance like chore that you have to do, to make up for, the failure there. That's a little failure, granted, right? But you can't be afraid to fail is my biggest point. Bigger failures, the ones that you don't want to make, okay? And the academies and everything will get you really ready for these things. But the ones that you don't want to make are preventable errors. Where the stakes are at the highest. So, preventable errors that involve injury to life and limb.
Correct.
Those are the kind of ones that you get really, really prepped for. And then also too, we all are human. So you can execute everything perfectly and still lose. That's another message that I would want for the students to have, but don't be afraid to fail. And the profession has a great, great way, because of its institutional culture in the profession, of it sort of inoculates against failure by bringing attention to you if your head frankly starts to get too big, right? So it'll condition you in a way, because we all make mistakes. and but you can't fear them because that's actually part of the growth process that makes you into a better professional. So don't view things as failures, view them as, of course, and this is kind of cliche, but they're all learning opportunities. I didn't do as well, say for the first time that I went to X type of incident that I did, when I had 12, 13, 14, 15 years of experience. And it was just like at that point in time, you can just do it in your sleep, right? But to get from point A to point B, there is a lot of, shall we call them, learning opportunities in between, and you can't fear them. And my other bit of advice is don't take yourself too serious. Take your work seriously and be a committed professional. But in terms of yourself, give yourself a little bit of break, right? You're going to make some mistakes out there. And one last bit I'll give you on that. Did I dodge it good about not embarrassing myself with, but that's not my intent. My intent's the bigger lesson, right? But the one thing that I would tell once I was in a supervisory position is I would tell people, and this sounds like you kind of have to follow this because it might sound counterintuitive, but there are mistakes of the heart and there are mistakes of the mind, right? Mistakes of the mind are easily workable with somebody and to be expected, right? So a mistake of the mind is I didn't know that, I forgot something, or whatever. We're all human. The mistake of the hearts are the harder ones. Those are the ones you have to look after, and those are integrity. So your integrity mistakes, right, they can damage an entire career in a second. Right. They can end a career. And so those are the ones you always just make sure that you're consistent with your own core values, and then your core values are aligned, which in, just look at the statement of ethics or core purposes of all the police departments out there. If you're going into law enforcement, you want to be aligned with the aspirations, of the profession that are in the overall ethics statements. And you do not make those kind of mistakes. That's the only one that, Professor Kelly's going to look at you like that about. But all of the other ones are perfectly forgivable and is in fact expected as part of your growth.
I understand. Thank you, Rob, very much. Now, here's a caveat to that, okay? So what would you tell, okay, and the reason I'm bringing this up, I'm going to put this in your head, what would you tell your 18-year-old self to get better prepared? So that's going to be step one. The reason why is because a lot of freshmen are 18 years old, and they want advice, and they also want to know, well, what would Rob do differently, if anything, okay, right, from that 18-year-old self? What would you say to that?
So I would say that part of that answer goes back to what we were just talking about.
Yeah, they're linked.
Yeah, because perfection, okay, is not a reasonable standard for anybody. Okay, so don't beat yourself up.
I appreciate you saying that. That's huge. For mental health, a lot of the students, Rob, really struggle with a mistake. And I'm seeing that more and more and more again. So honestly, I really appreciate you saying, look, you're human. We all make them. So go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So that's a big one. And, you want to hold yourself to a standard because you have goals that you have to achieve. And a certain amount of stress is good if it pushes you in the direction of action, where necessary action to achieve the life that you want is just part of the program. However, you just have to be careful of how you talk to yourself. And my advice, to my 18-year-old self would be, number one, that perfection is not the standard. Okay. Number two, just think of how you communicate with your friends, right? And in your internal dialogue, right, then treat yourself to the same standard that you would treat your friend, right? If you wouldn't say something to your friend or think something about your friend, or whatever, then don't subject yourself to that either. Okay. That doesn't mean, you're selfish or anything like that. It just means the fact that, you are practicing a good form of internal hygiene, and you are not imposing an unreasonable standard, on yourself that's just not achievable by anybody like on the earth. And some people have problems with that. So it's just learning to balance. Yes, you want to do well, you will do well. Okay, give things your best shot, but also realize that that's like a beginning, but life's complicated. Things don't always work out like at first or something like that. And use your other core values like, commitment and diligence and tenacity or whatever, and respond to hurdles. But the hurdles are going to be there and the solutions to them are not perfect. So just don't beat yourself up when you have these high, lofty expectations. Sometimes you'll hit them. Sometimes it's going to take a little longer than you thought it would. But just remember why you're doing it and treat yourself no different than you'd treat, any of your good friends.
Excellent. Excellent. That's great advice. Okay. Absolutely. All right. Okay. So now to dig in deep. Okay. Can you tell me 3 influential people that have impacted your professional career, and how did they impact that career?
Okay. So, folks impacting my career, and it is, my professional career, but I have to give a shout out and props first to my wife, not because she's listening in the background or anything like that.
It's recorded. We can.
Yeah, I know, but we can play this back if she sees it. I'm really not trying to earn brownie points there. She is a law enforcement spouse, so I had a little bit of experience. I think 2 years experience roughly when she came into the picture, but basically for the other 23, okay, she was right along for the ride of it. And part of doing well in law enforcement or all of the public safety professions, because we're not just law enforcement here at LEJA, we have fire, we have emergency, we have law enforcement. And, so we have a lot of integrated, disciplines, but they're all the same. What I'll say to you in these professions in this way is that you're going to see the best and the worst of human nature, right? Depending on what the day is, right? And that's part of the adventure and the challenge and all of those kind of things. But you need a strong support system too. And your workplace can try to provide that, right? They have employee assistance programs and all of those kind of things that recognize, hey, these are challenging jobs, but also, the personal support system at home. So my wife and I were a nice team. She was a great law enforcement spouse, and she went through basically it all with me. And what's funny about her is like I couldn't really fool her. You might infer that, I have a bit of a flat delivery or whatever, and I'm neither up or down. Well, at an incident, even a critical incident, I would be talking just like I am now. She might call if I was in a position to take the call quick or something like that. I would just be talking like normal, and almost every time she'd be like, "What are you doing?" If it was something like that was critical in nature, and I was like, no, everything's cool. Meanwhile, I'm the incident commander at like a barricaded gunman or something like that.
Yeah.
But she always just kind of knew. She had like a sixth sense, and I'd have to be like, no, everything's cool, I'm okay. But just a funny thing that, so they go along for the ride and they need support too. So one's my wife. I had a supervisor really early in my career. It's actually right after I first got promoted for the first time. I did get promoted pretty young in my career. So I was 27. I just turned 27, when I got my first supervisory rank. And, that's fun, right? Like when you're coming in and there's, troopers that are maybe 50, and have 25 years experience, and you have 5 years of experience and you're 27 years old. So you learn some leadership, skills in a position like that. But I had a really good mentor right after I got promoted. And it was, I got sent up to headquarters for a while, for an assignment. And that mentor was there and, had experience, was about 5 years older than me. So, was able to give me some good life and leadership lessons. And also, too, back to family, but, I have a really close relationship with my older brother. And although he did not, go into policing, he did go into the law, number one, but he was in the military. And, just in addition to being brave, interpersonally, he had a law degree, but he stayed an enlisted person and in the infantry, even though obviously he was offered the JAG Corps, and went over to serve with the younger National Guardsmen. He was regular Army first, and then he went to the Guard. But he went over with the younger National Guardsmen that he had trained and went to war with them. And I learned, just by not only was he a good big brother growing up, but, I learned from watching, his professional development like that about what it means to be a true leader and really care about people and, caring about them, like greater love hath no man, that they're willing to risk it all for their friends, right? That's a paraphrase.
Yeah.
But, just watching my brother, I professionally, in addition to all the personal stuff, that I got out of him, but like just watching him professionally, that's a huge lesson about being a good leader, not deserting people when the chips are down and getting right in there with them and, with all of the hardships, because that's the thing about leadership is no matter where you are in your leadership journey, the, you're last to eat, is my way of looking at it. And, 2 or 3 days before I retired and actually came right out to Western, we had a very high level critical incident. And it was right before I turned in all my gear, with your last days after 25 years of service. And I was right out there with, my troopers, at the critical incident and, doing everything that you need to do. But that's easy to do because you care about the people,
Right.
that you serve with. But also too, if you do your career the right way, one of the things I was low key happy about is, at my retirement speech, again, I'm a little reserved, but don't be afraid of me, okay? But I come off that way, but I'm really not. But it was funny. I gave a speech to the station, and I was directing it to my last station where I served as commander, and I told them a little bit of what I really felt, about that.
This was good.
And I was happy to report, but in a good way, but some of the toughest men and women that you'd ever want to encounter, and I got some tears out of them, right? So there's a love and a mutual respect for colleagues that work closely and well together. And, if you can have an impact like that, on people, that means you've done well. So I didn't want to make them cry, but the fact that they were getting a little misty and those kind of things, it actually made, me just reflect happily on the fact that, yes, that's the way I feel too. So when I shared with them, the nonverbals that people can't fake that I got back from them expressed the same thing back to me. And that's a bigger lesson, by the way. When you get into grad studies, that's more when you'll see me for leadership, but I kind of weave it in, I guess, for undergrad too. But, that's a lesson in and of itself that the energy or the things that you give, a lot of times is what you're going to see come back. So
I understand that. Thank you. Next question I got for you. Okay, so what did you not expect in your career? Is there anything that threw you going, wow, I didn't know that about policing, or even the state police, or even with your law degree? Is there anything you said, wow, that was a shocker to me?
Yeah, with the law enforcement career, and I've worn a few different hats. So I've actually been a practicing attorney too, along the same timeline as that I was with policing as well. The department allows supplementary employment. So after law school, I was able to balance essentially two careers. And the way I reckon that to people, if you're a lawyer and you go work for a big firm, like one of these big
Correct,
firms that you see with people, young associates are making all this money at like doing, well, they're working 80 hours a week,
That's true.
so the money's not necessarily what you think when you factor in how many hours they're working. So I wouldn't say I worked 80 hours a week because I had a family. But in years when I was in policing, and then also practicing as an attorney, I would say that I worked 60 hours, and sometimes 70 hours a week. But and that kind of is less, at least in the big firms. And so I gave law enforcement its due first. But also I was able to build a pretty decently successful practice, which I wound down basically once I found out that my two daughters did not want to be lawyers. I was like, okay, woohoo, I'm going to not like take clients. And I went into academia, which is for me, that's a form of self-actualization to be doing what I'm doing. I'm certainly not doing it for the money. But big surprises wise, the first one is if you go into law enforcement, it's not all action and adventure all the time, like it is when you see in a movie. Watching, if they made it more accurate, watching your favorite characters do paperwork for hours after a big arrest.
I'm glad you brought this up.
Yeah, it would not be good TV, right? Or it would not make for an interesting movie. So a lot of people just forget like all of the steps. Now, by the way, when we do club activities or something like that, the Investigators Club did a mock crime scene like one year for Halloween, and they had a whole script and all that. So they used me and Professor Luff to help. So what I did is not only in the crime scene, like where there was evidence to collect and there was actors and everything like that, but we had working officers at different stations to be judges and advisors of the setup. And the students, by the way, put basically all this together. We sort of helped them out with certain things. But what we were able to help out with was, when you go and collect this evidence, where does the evidence go? We have to put it on a property record, right? The property record has to maintain the chain of custody. The lab just doesn't know what you want when you have all of this X, Y, and Z of property. So you have to do lab requests. And in that mock crime scene that they did for Halloween, if you didn't do the right lab sequence and all of those kind of things too, where you go to that station, you didn't get all the clues that you needed, to potentially solve the crime. So that's a way that we're able to bring real world experience. But it's interesting. It's part of the job, but people don't see their favorite character in a movie or on TV sitting there, filling out forms and writing and making sure, hey, let me type out this probable cause affidavit. You just see them go effect the arrest or something like that, or do the interview. That's all part of it, by the way. And the action's part of it. But, the action stuff is like maybe 2 to 5%, and the routine, just like any other job, is the rest, right? And then in lawyering, I would say it depends on what you do, But one thing that I didn't expect, from being a lawyer is now all of my cases as a law enforcement officer were important. But when you're a lawyer and you represent a small or mid-sized business, and if you don't do good, right, you don't do a good job and the whole business goes down, if it's like an existential type of issue to the business, congratulations. Like 30 to 50 people just lost their employment, right? Because it won't be
No stress.
a going concern anymore, right? So you learn to adapt to that, right? Too. Okay. So I'm not neutering my previous statements about, that, you have to be perfect. But what you do have to do is you have to be on top of things in your profession. And, as a lawyer, there are different stressors, that a law enforcement officer would carry. But for me, again, wanting to do the job the right way and everything like that, um, you wouldn't want your surgeon getting emotional, when they're in the middle. So same as a lawyer and all those kind of things too. But also that doesn't mean behind the scenes that like, I really want to make sure that I do all my due diligence to obtain the best result for my client that I can. And that is something that, I mean, they may hit it at an angle at law school, but they don't really go into that because they're just going into the meat and potatoes of what you need to do to pass the bar. So,
Well, Rob, I've got a last question for you, and it's going to kind of match what you just said, but because I get these questions all the time. So all these students will come in and they're like, oh my goodness, I just watched CSI. I just watched, I don't know, Quantico, or some FBI show, or some police show. What was it, Chicago PD or something? I don't know them because I have to be honest, I don't watch them. Okay, but, okay. Are any of those shows even close to being real? Okay, and have you seen any of those shows? I'm just curious.
Yeah, and that's one to the eternal frustrations
Okay.
of my student, right? Of the students. I do ask what they're interested in under the very unlikely chance that it is something that, I watch too.
Yeah.
But I don't watch a lot of streaming television or even movies these days.
I don't
And,
either.
and part of what I say too is like, if you're back in that old show Cops, where they used to
Yeah.
follow cops around live or whatever. To me, if I was an administrative professional or whatever, that would be like watching a show called Administrative Professionals. It's like I get enough of work at work. I don't need to watch it like in my off time. I have other pursuits, which, by the way, is part of the way that you stay healthy.
Correct.
In the public safety administration professions, all of them, okay, because you're going to have excellent, really cool adventures as a law enforcement officer, working in emergency management, fire, okay, EMS, okay, all of these kind of things are going to give you a life of adventure for sure, okay, but you also need other pursuits, right, that keep you balanced and healthy.
Yeah.
So on those shows, they will ask me things and I'll be able to say, no, that's unrealistic. That technology doesn't actually exist. That doesn't account for the backlog. Okay. And all of that kind of stuff, like where you are not getting instantaneous results. You're fighting with 50 other really important cases for priority, like to get something done sometimes. So that's a little bit of the inside baseball that there are a lot of misconceptions about there. So it's good. Movies get you the interest and they get you into the ballpark of, wow, that might be a field that I'm interested in. But also, then when you learn the real field, you're able to separate. Nah, that's really kind of fiction for the most part. No, this is actually real. So the only thing that'll teach you that is your professors at LEJA, because we're all experienced. But the best way is doing it yourself, and that'll confirm the lessons that you get in the classroom.
Excellent. Well, I have to say, Professor Kelly, it has been an honor having you on this podcast. I know the students are always excited to take you in your classes. They talk about you, and then hopefully now they know a little bit more about you as this goes on. So I want to thank you so much for being a part of that, okay?
Yeah, and thanks for having me, Jamie, and good luck with these excellent podcast series that you're putting together. It's a really cool idea, and I think that, it's good. So, and I would encourage all students, and I do, at the beginning of every semester and everything like that. But your professors are a resource.
Absolutely.
So, but it's a resource that you have to invoke. So, I joke with my students, but you couldn't afford me as a consultant, except for the fact that that's all provided for you by Western Illinois University. If a business or if a government entity or whatever came to hire me as a consultant, um, then they're going to get the fees that you might anticipate, for that. And whereas students have that not only for me, I mean, we have New York Times best-selling authors, FBI like career, Chicago PD, high-level state police commanders, for one of my other colleagues, all these, you have all of this expertise, and it's free, like for the cost of your education. But people have to invoke that, and the students that do, they really get just the fullest out of the experience because the professors like it too. But we're not going to chase you around, be like, join my club, or hey, come into office hours. That would be weird, but we can be inviting, and we mean it. And some of the students do take advantage of it. But that would be my advice. So if you're going to invest in your education, the classroom's great, but get it beyond the classroom and you'll get the full experience of it. Now not only will your professors be somebody that you can use for maybe a recommendation because you got an A or A minus in a class or something, but they become somebody that's part of your professional network if they know you very well by the time you graduate. So you kind of have to use that.
Well, that is excellent advice. And again, thank you, sir, for being a part of this cast. We appreciate it. Yeah. And hopefully you'll be willing to come back on and give us some more expertise areas. Okay. And we would love to have you. Okay.
Yep. I look forward to coming back, and thanks for leading the charge, Jamie.
Thank you, sir. So at this time, we're going to conclude this podcast. We are so thankful that you've been able to listen to Professor Kelly and listen to his expertise. And again, look forward to upcoming episodes again in WIU Inside the System, presented by the School of Law Enforcement and Justice Administration.